did so much like talking over the past few weeks about that show that like when the time came to come up with today's episode, I was like, what can we talk about? I was like coming through a lot of ideas in my head. You had brought up something and I completely forgot what that was. But I was like, we could do that. That's a great idea. But like I kind of wanted to keep it like in line with the focus of what we kind of just wrapped
Yeah.
up with. And I feel like talking about TV, we talked so much about Jurassic. Not so much. We talked a little bit about Jurassic. We talked so much about Monarch, but we talked a little bit here and there about Jurassic and like how it could do better and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I think I wanted to have like a bigger conversation about that because we do talk a lot about plots and things like that. We're always coming up with ideas. I feel like when it comes to the live streams, every week somebody's got like a really cool idea. I'm running with it in a chat or whatever. There's always so many fun ideas, whether it's the mailbag, me and Jen running through ideas, and even me and you talking about chaos theory and stuff like that. and even with Aaron. So like we've really talked so much in regards to like what is a great story for Jurassic. And I don't necessarily want to cover that too much. I mean, we can definitely touch those topics a little bit, but I feel like overall I want to talk more so about like what would make for a great television series, what would help them, and I'm talking live action, because I think we've had a few great seasons, great, is relative too, because I do think there are some like absolutely stellar television series out there right now that like make me cry and just are so dramatic and tense. And and I don't necessarily think I've gotten that from Camp Cretaceous. I have a great time with that show and I think it's a lot of fun and a great show, but I think we could step it up even more.
100%.
But like, I'm just talking and talking. I'm rambling off of the premise of what today is that
It's
we're doing.
right.
But like, I just think there's ways to make a Jurassic live action television show that could really excel in a space where we're getting IP franchises left and right. We are in a time period right now where those franchises are kind of trying to figure out what do we do. So it is. Maybe, I don't know. I've always kind of wondered if Jurassic was in like a wait and see kind of thing. Like we're just going to hold back and see what others are doing. But I don't know. Like, what is your take on what Jurassic has, like what's going through their minds? Like whether it's Frank Marshall or whoever, like Colin Trevorrow, Steven Spielberg, what is going through their minds? If you could put me in their brain for a few minutes and just think about, like, why haven't we seen one? What is their game plan? Do you have any like inkling as far as what they could be potentially doing behind the scenes to prepare?
I don't really think they have a game plan, to be honest with you. I think that is part of it. It's like I've kind of alluded to when we were talking about Monarch. I think when you look at Monarch and you look at Jurassic, both are universes that are so titanic in their scale that you have to really think about compelling storytelling. And you have to kind of think out of the box. So, Monarch introduced us to characters that we'd never seen before as a way of connecting to events and things that we'd seen in the films. And I think Jurassic would have to do something similar. And I think that's quite a daunting prospect for any franchise, because if you don't stick the landing with that, it can have very, very dire consequences. And I think when you look at just Jurassic's history, we had 3 films initially, the third of which didn't perform as well as Universal wanted it to. And we've now got 3 films again. You could argue the same has happened again. I think it's fair to say that Dominion is divisive with a lot of people. So therefore, I would imagine that there's a reluctance from Universal. You have this IP that is quite loved by people, and the more you do with it, the more diluted it becomes, especially if the things that you're doing with it aren't great. And you look at the way that the MCU has gone, they kind of exploded, and as a result of that, it's now so diluted that a lot of their core fan base don't necessarily go out and see the films. You know, I was die hard into the MCU in the early years. In phase two, I was going to midnight showings. I literally only just over Christmas saw the films that came out over 22 and 23. So I
Hmm.
think that in itself says a lot. So I feel like some of it is them avoiding that and them not wanting to dilute the franchise too much. But I genuinely think the other half of it is them not having an idea what to do with the franchise and perhaps not valuing Jurassic for the household name that it really is.
Yeah, you brought up some good points there, and I'm constantly hearing the conversations because I listen to Marvel podcasts and Star Wars podcasts, and I even talk on the Star Wars one from time to time, and the conversation always is with those all those franchises is like, oh, why are people not going to the billion or what we
Yeah.
thought was going to be $1 billion movie. We spent 250,000 million. I'm sorry, way undercut that price. 250 million dollars on this budget plus marketing. And why are people not coming to see this? And I still don't really know what the actual answer is. I think it's so
Yeah.
easy to say that fatigue is a problem, but I think there's definitely more to it, and I don't really know. I think it's just a
Yeah.
combination of everything, but Jurassic has not. I don't think it's really done that, even though if you ask maybe people outside the franchise, that are huge fans, not huge fans like us, people might say like, "Oh, another one." You do hear that a lot,
Yeah.
but like, it's not. It's six over the course of 30 years, plus a few TV shows, animated, and then Battle at Big Rock. So it's not really all that much, but I wonder. I mean, like they seem okay, perfectly okay with going into the market with animated TV, and
Yeah.
not necessarily they're not really saying like, well, we're holding back all of our content so we can make it truly great. So I don't necessarily know that that is the case because we have gotten some
Oh,
wild
it's
seasons
definitely
of.
not the case. I mean, I could get you to talk about the motion comics if I really wanted to.
Nah, you couldn't though. That's the thing, is you really couldn't. They do exist. Do they actually? Do they still are they still out there? Or
I
have they
have
like
no idea.
have they taken that in the Amber Society? Like, have they wiped the slate with? I don't know. Like, so I don't know that they're like being too precious with the property. I know
Yeah.
it does seem like a wait and see kind of mentality, but like I don't know. I don't know. I just think that when I think about what Jurassic can do television wise, and even honestly, just like more films and stuff like that, I think we need to have a course correction in a way, and we need to do something a
Yeah.
little different. And I think television is like a really perfect outlet for that. And I think what my sentiment might come down to today is just something new. And I
Yeah.
think that's really what I want to see. But I do want to talk about like some of the details and things of what other IPs are doing really well, and we do have Marvel, which has been slowing down and is still producing, I think, good content. There's definitely still great movies going, and there's great TV. Sometimes there's not such great TV, but it happens. It happens, and I think they're taking
Yeah.
risks here and there. So every now and then, maybe something doesn't hit. Um,
I think with
and
Marvel, the big thing to really take away is how it initially started, right? So the best example is WandaVision, where you have a story that is really cinema scale brought to the smaller screen. That's kind of what I think it needs to continue to be. Like in this new era of telling stories that would traditionally be told in the cinema on the smaller screen, you kind of still want to have that sense of scope and scale because that's what really makes that storytelling so immersive for people, I think, and so appealing.
yeah, I had the chance to go see Ahsoka this year,
Yeah,
or last year, I guess, in theaters. So I got to
yeah,
see episodes 1 and 2 in theaters for like a special event, and I think they showed those back to back. I don't think episode 3 was shown. I don't remember, but I think it was just 2 episodes. And
Yeah.
then I got to watch like the rest, a few at home. I think like 3 and 4, and then I got to see episode 5 in a theater again. And then I forget how many there were. There was 8. So then I got to see the rest at home. But yes, seeing it in theaters and being in that immersive space and everything was very great and such a thrilling experience to see. And maybe it helped my excitement level, but I do feel like it translated to home as well. Like
Yeah.
seeing such an expansive story, and Ahsoka's was very, very expansive, and
Yes.
big places, big stories, and big monsters and everything. And I think they were able to tell a story on television that really, and it's so cliche, but legitimately had me on the edge of my seat.
Yeah.
You know, with these characters that I've known and loved for a while now, you know, since the Clone Wars and Rebels, like they really kept me on the edge of my seat that whole time. And I was absolutely thrilled with the storytelling. And I know not everybody loved that show, but I thought it was just excellent. But you know, we do have Star Wars doing that on multiple levels with Andor and Mandalorian.
Yes.
Now, Andor doesn't really get into like more of like what I would kind of expect from Jurassic. Um,
Mm.
I don't think, even though there is, you know, it is like Jurassic
I
is
don't
centered
know,
around
you
a
know.
spy thriller. You know, it is kind of like a spy
I
thriller
want to see
story.
Robert Muldoon, like young Robert Muldoon, just breaking somebody's neck by accident in a dark alleyway.
No one else would take him in except for John Hammond. John Hammond just this guy. He just collects a bunch of criminals. That's the story. Um, but no, I think like I do think there's great storytelling throughout all of their different shows and big monsters and things like that. And then we just like talked about Monarch Legacy of
Yeah.
Monsters, where you know that is a Godzilla King Kong kind of story that has the biggest creatures you could possibly have. Like there's nothing bigger than them. So that's crazy. That and you know, we can go into it just a little bit because we, you know, I don't know if anybody like everybody listened to our breakdowns. I know I put them up on the podcast feed, but like who knows if you're interested or not. But like I think that show was so excellent and did so
Yes.
many things so well. They did the characters exceptionally well. I felt like really attached to each and every person that they introduced. I thought visually it looked like really stunning across the entire series, and it's an Apple show, and I feel like they spend a lot of money and make things look really
Yeah.
good. So, um, but I love that. I love the story, the CG, the characters, and yeah, I think it was just like it felt like those movies just on television, and I don't think it felt any different. And I was, you know, I was hooked just like I would be with any of those movies. So, and I probably liked it
And I
more
was
than
just
Godzilla
hooked to an
versus Kong.
obsessive level. Yeah.
Yeah, you took it to a different level, totally, man. Like that was if anybody out there is listening to this, Tom like went through each episode and just nailed every theory and called it from the beginning. It was crazy. So if you did not listen, go watch those like the television show in that universe with Godzilla. It's so good. And then listen to Tom just absolutely nail everything. So that's spoilers because well, if you hear Tom speak now, if you're watching now, like you're like, oh well, he just spoiled what's gonna happen for me. But yeah, but like that show was just excellent, right? Like
It
I
was
loved
so
every
good.
second of
Yeah.
it.
I think that that show perfectly encapsulates what a good television show that's building from a movie franchise needs to be, which is tonally consistent. So it needs to feel like it's grounded in that same universe. It needs to have that same cinematic style. It needs to have so many of the things that we're going to talk about that actually define it as being within that universe. And I think that's where things can go wrong is if you do something that's a massive tonal shift, then suddenly audiences don't feel like they're in the same universe. They feel like they're in a new universe or they're in a different story. And that's where you can get that inconsistency if you're not careful. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't do a different tone. So, you say a more mature Jurassic story, you could do that, but you have to have some sense of consistency throughout to really make it feel like it is part of that universe, I would say.
Yeah, you know, that's actually interesting though, because that universe is has transformed like
Yeah.
wildly. You know, from 2014's Godzilla, very grounded feeling, nothing crazy about it other than monsters being real. There's like helicopters and tanks and things like that. But like, you know, then it goes like a little step further with like, you know, basically like Agents of Shield kind of technology,
Yeah.
like flying
Good old
like
USS Dargo.
yeah, so there's some crazy stuff in that movie, but then even take it even a step farther with Godzilla versus Kong, and it's like, whoa, where have we gone? We are basically like
Yeah.
in space almost in the way that things are happening here, and the realism. And then I, you know, look at the new trailer for the new Empire. It's like even more wild. So like then
Yeah.
in the middle of all of that, they decide to make Monarch and ground that show so incredibly well that it is like a tonal shift from where we currently are in the movie franchise.
Yes.
So
Well, so it's interesting you say that because it is a tonal shift, but it's tonally consistent with when it's set. So it feels like
yes,
Godzilla
yes.
2014, and that's exactly how they nailed it.
Yeah, and I think yeah, I feel like I remember having a conversation like this with Camp Cretaceous and maybe seasons
Yeah.
4 and 5, how things didn't feel tonally consistent with the technology that the time period had, right? So I know
Yeah.
we had that kind of questioning about, you know, the technology that was on that other island, the
Your
Manticore
cameo in
Island.
that show, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. The the robot. Like we talked about, like that is just after the events of Jurassic World, basically a few months or whatever. But yet none of this is available in Jurassic World. At least we don't see that. Now, granted, we don't really see anything other than a house in the snow and a bird stomping on the snow, and then we see an airport, and then Isla Nublar. And then that's
Yeah.
it, really. Like, we don't get the scope of what the world is like at that point, and honestly, still really don't. But we kind of get it throughout Fallen Kingdom a little bit, but it just seems like the normal world. It doesn't seem like there's any crazy tech or anything like that. So they found ways to unground it, I think, with Camp Cretaceous in the later seasons. But I'm hearing that like the new show is going to be like something more exciting for older audiences and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So that'll be exciting to see the Chaos Theory kind of going through. And I was actually looking through the episode titles, and I want to go back and watch the one episode because there was an episode at the end. I think it was the season finale of season 2. It was literally called Chaos Theory, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh, like I don't think that there's going to be any tie to the show, but like I was like, oh, that's nice. But
The show is actually just the events around that episode. So it's what Dave and Roxy were doing at the time. It's
Hey,
what
I
Dr. Wu
want
was
that.
doing at the time.
That's the stuff I want. All right, so let's talk about that for a second though, because I want to talk a little bit about like heavy lore versus
Yes.
just like kind of doing something original.
Yeah.
I think that Jurassic has, I'll say, some lore. It's not a super heavy lore franchise. It's like, yes, we know that like John Hammond made a park and made some dinosaurs, and then Fallen Kingdom came around and like gave it a little bit extra dynamic and
Yeah.
like kind of made
But was his
almost
middle name Parker or Alfred?
yeah. Well, like it's consistency, man. We got to be consistent. I don't know. But like it did things that I didn't really expect and wasn't part of my thought process when it came to like
Yeah.
those like John Hammond and stuff. Like I kind of felt like he was just a money guy. I know, like, you know, he's called doctor at some points, but like I never really considered him a hands-on guy or anything
Yeah.
like that. So they added some lore there, and then that was about it. There's not really a ton of lore, I don't think, in this franchise. You know, it's not like it's like an ancient thing where, you know, there's so much lore spread throughout this. It's not a galaxy full of adventures. It's not, you know, it's not the MCU with superheroes all over the place. It's just one island that went a little haywire, and then another island that went a little haywire, and then what
I
happened
was
from
about
there.
to say one island, Brad. One island.
Yeah. Well, you didn't you hear? I thought you heard that the Lost World and Jurassic Park 3 are not canon. That's what I read. I read that. I'm pretty sure I read that a bunch
Go
of
home.
times.
Go home. You're
um,
drunk, Brad. Go
yeah, I
home.
know. But I just think that yes, we could get a show with some lore, and it would be exciting, and I think it would be interesting. But there comes a lot of baggage, I think, with
Yeah,
going in the lore direction. I think Monarch Legacy of Monsters was really able to kind of like divert itself around. It was like it gave us so much lore and really built the world out in such a way that I just didn't expect. But it kind of diverted around a lot of the lore that made its own version of the lore and expanded upon it from there. So I think maybe that's a potential that
yeah,
which I is kind of what they did with Fallen Kingdom as well. It's like we thought we had this lore, but then they diverted and said, "Oh, there's also Benjamin Lockwood," and gave us that story. So like that kind of is what Monarch is doing by giving us the what's her name, Charlotte and Maisie kind of
yeah.
storyline and stuff like that. Like yes, we could get that kind of continuation, but I think there's a lot of baggage with the lore and also bringing
Mm.
characters back. I don't know. People are getting older in the franchise, and I don't know if anybody's going to come back for a TV show or not. Like, who even knows if that's possible? But I think if you were to do like an original story, I think that at least gives this franchise room to breathe and
Yeah,
something new to do instead of just like trying to do something with the lore that doesn't need to be done. And I kind of felt
yeah,
that with what they've been doing over the past 8 years or so, 9 years, however long it's been, almost 10. Um, I feel like they've almost tried to do too much and try to tie things up too much that like, I don't know, just show me a few things on the screen and be done with it, and don't really try to make it some deep thing that like I don't know. I don't want to sift through documents, man. Like that's boring to
mm,
me. So I feel like there's ways to like build this lore out, but like also just skip around it and just do your own thing that's not attached to InGen or John Hammond or anything like that. So I think there's ways to kind of make a bigger story based off of that about people.
I think it's interesting because I kind of like having the documents and things out there and the expanded lore for people who want to dive into it. I think you don't necessarily need to address it within a TV show. What I would say is I think as a TV show it's just important to be respectful of the fact that it's out there. So I do think that the Charlotte Lockwood thing, although they gave their own twist on it, it was kind of a case of, oh, this is what's true, now this is what's true, and it got
Yeah.
really convoluted for
Yeah.
audiences. So I think if you're gonna do like some alternative, oh actually this is what happened, you need to be crystal clear with it and how it functions. And I think apart from doing that, you just need to be respectful of the fact that the law is there and there's that groundwork laid. And if you're going to tell a separate story, that's fine, but don't do something that's going to contradict what's already there, because there's no need to do it. At the end of the day, like you say, there's space for original stories in this universe. So why would you tie yourself into stuff that is potentially going to annoy the fans if you mess with it too much? It seems like a no-brainer to me to kind of be respectful of what's there, but build on it rather than building around it.
Yeah. I I just think like it would just be a lot of extra work that they don't necessarily need to do.
Yeah,
I love thinking about this universe and there was moments where between Fallen Kingdom and Dominion talking about Maisie and what stories of seeing her on the islands could be. We kind of get that a little bit in that story. And if they were to ever do a story with that character, that would be great. But like I don't know, is the excitement there for a story that's brand new that is supposed to it's interesting because it's like it's supposed to have weight and heft to it, but like it's also brand new and we just created this lore. I don't know.
yeah,
It's not like we're digging deep into the archives of Jurassic Park and creating something that is based off the original premise or
yeah.
anything like that. So um
I think if
I don't know.
anything, what I would say is more so than connecting to the lore, it's how do you find compelling allegories to tell through Jurassic? Because you look at Jurassic Park, it's very much an allegory for our relationship with technology and science and where that goes wrong. And then you
Mhm.
look at the Jurassic World franchise, and whether you feel it delivered on it or not, Colin was very clear that the intention with that was to be an allegory for our relationship with animals and how they can be abused and mistreated. And I think like that at the end of the day, that's such a core component of Jurassic is actually what is the deeper message here? What is the allegory that we're trying to tell? What is the lesson that people could learn from? So taking like a topical example, could it be, oh, what happens if the Fish and Wildlife Service were to use AI to try and control the dinosaurs and it all goes wrong or something like that? You know, how do you contextualize it to the stories
Ugh.
that matter to people of the day, I guess?
Yeah, yeah, those are the conversations I feel like we had a lot of leading into Dominion, and even with
Yeah.
the ending of Camp Cretaceous and the whole chip and controlling dinosaur thing. Like there's a lot that could have been done there, but like yes, they could definitely head in that kind of route for the future, I think. But um that means we got to see the Brads again, you know?
Oh no, 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 no. No, 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 no. No, 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 no.
I still hear you talking about your video froze. All right, you're back.
I saw
I
it
just
frozen. That was actually just my reaction to that. It was just
it worked for both, yeah. I don't know. I think I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to tiptoe around stories and plots. Every 2 seconds, I'm just like, but we have so many fun stories
yeah.
that I could make up right here on the fly. It's so difficult to stay away from them. But I want to talk a little bit. We'll come back to story, I think, in a little bit. But I want to talk about like one of the biggest questions we've always had is it possible? Like, can we do this?
Yes.
Because for so many years we've really wondered, and this is kind of like before, this is also recent. Marvel and Star
Yeah.
Wars and Monarch and Godzilla, all that stuff is
And
so recent.
Prehistoric Planet, I would
Yeah.
say, is quite a big one as well.
Well, actually, yeah, and that actually, I'll kind of go on a tangent here because I did bring this up. I thought this was kind of interesting. I brought up the top 250 TV shows from
Yeah.
IMDb, and I just wanted to see like what are people rating highly and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, I'm shocked.
Oh wow.
Planet Earth is number 2 and 3. Planet Earth 2
Yeah.
is number 2. Planet Earth is number 3. So I was like, okay, wait, people are really high on,
Blue
that kind
Planet.
of
Yeah.
experience. Like, Blue Planet 2, Cosmos, like Our Planet. It's constantly in there. Like, so Life. There's a lot of like nature documentary kind of style
Yeah.
things. I did not see Prehistoric Planet. I didn't scroll all the way through, but like,
Frozen
there's
Planet.
there's a lot of like your typical shows, Breaking Bad and
Only Fools and
Bluey
Horses.
and Game of Thrones and stuff like that, Sopranos. But like, it's hard to. I can't really say like Sopranos and Chernobyl, and maybe Chernobyl could like have like not. I'm not trying to compare Chernobyl and Jurassic together, but like I think there's like the heaviness of that could be
Yeah.
applied to the Jurassic franchise in some way. Um, Breaking Bad, I don't know, that doesn't really connect. But I just think it's interesting though that people are really rating those kind of planet
Yeah.
Earth kind of experiences so high. So, if something were to go in that direction, that would be kind of interesting. But what I really wanted to talk about as well was the fact that we've questioned for so long whether or not this was possible. That it's we dealt with what, Terra Nova. We had that for a little
Oh,
while. Steven Spielberg
I
produced
love
TV
that
show.
show.
I loved it
Yeah.
too. I loved it
I
too. I
love
thought
the
it was
fact that
great.
they use the Nerf CS6 as the prop for one of the guns, and it's just spray painted black.
I don't even know what. Oh, really?
Yeah,
I
they
didn't even
use
think
the
I saw.
Nerf gun for some of the
That's so funny.
soldiers.
It just makes like a poof, and just like a ball comes flying out. No, I think that show was really cool, but like that's for so long that is what we had something to base it off of. I know you had a show. What was the Primeval, right?
Primeval.
And
How dare you refer to Primeval? It's just you had a show. What
you
was
had a
it?
show that you were
Do you
into.
not understand the cultural significance of Primeval? Okay,
I do not actually.
That show, 2008, 9-year-old Tom. That was my introduction to dinosaurs.
Oh, so the cultural impact that you are giving to the world is because of that show. I see. All right.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the amount of content produced is based off that one show. But no, I don't really know that show. I know you love it, but like I can't imagine it.
I need to send you a DVD set.
I'm sure
and
I
then
could probably
be
stream it.
Region locked, and you won't be able to watch it.
I don't know. I doubt it looked as great as sometimes Jurassic can look. Did it?
The people who did the CGI for Primeval were the same people who did Walking with Dinosaurs, Impossible Pictures.
I don't necessarily care for those, like Walking with Dinosaurs or even Prehistoric Planet. I think they all look good or whatever, but like, I don't know. So what
you're on thin ice right now, Bradley.
I know, I'm trying to skate around it. But like, how often was that show on? Let me ask you that.
It was weekly, so it had 5 seasons.
How many episodes are we talking?
It was between so season 1 was 6 episodes, and then I think it went
UK
up
shows.
to sort of 12, 13.
Okay, yeah, I know those early UK shows were always like so short, and I'd be like, why do we only have like 5 episodes? Like, what is going on? And now we're doing that here for so long. Yeah. Like now we're over, doing that with so many shows. I mean, I wrote down a bunch actually. Camp Cretaceous had 8, 10, 11, and 12. Monarch, we just finished it, has 10. Mandalorian continually has 8, and Ahsoka had 8. So yeah, there's I feel like a consistent basis there. But we've always wondered though, like how can you produce like such a CG heavy story?
Yes.
In the Jurassic universe, with all that CG and all those dinosaurs and attacks, it's never really felt possible. But we all know it's totally possible now. I mean, like I brought up a bunch of images. So here's some from Monarch and other shows. This is on Monarch, and it looked fantastic. Now these images are just poor images from the internet, but like, so they're not like super crystal clear. But things like this and Godzilla itself.
Dude, that scene!
That just incredible. And Godzilla didn't look any worse. Like it didn't look different than it looks in the movies. And in Mandalorian, you're getting like more almost Jurassic kind of style things, like with like basically Dimorphodons and things flying around and
Dimorphodons, the Mosasaurus that appears in Mandalorian.
Yeah, exactly, like a Triceratops kind of thing. This Mosasaurus looking thing. So this and it's not just like a quick like a chomp or like a a little. There in the first episode of Mandalorian, there was like a little thing or big thing that popped out of the water, grabbed on, and then disappeared, and that was it. But then after that, all these other things are getting very extended sequences, like the crate dragon dude. That scene was so long and so incredible. Like that sequence was just one of the most thrilling things, and I think that moment. Because did that kick off, or it was somewhere in the start of like season 2 or so?
It was after he meets Cobb Vanth, so it was quite early.
And I just remember being like, that is the moment where I'm like, whoa, we can do this. Like this is possible now. Like we can have a story with Jurassic and make it massive. And even Ahsoka's doing it on just an incredible scale as well. So I'm blown away at what is possible, and I'm sure the budgets are outlandish, and people are probably overworked and underpaid, but like they look beautiful. Like all these shows look beautiful, and I think we could actually get a show where it's not just like some sneak dinosaur attacks every now and then. You could actually get full on dinosaur centric shows and stuff like that, and do the 6 episodes or 8 episodes, and just that's fine. That's totally fine.
It's
and a few years later, come back with another season. I think it's totally possible now that we could have a really great CG show.
You've touched on something that I wrote, which was quality over quantity, and I made a point of saying, look at modern blah, 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 seasons, which do 6 episodes. I like tried to say seasons, but I was halfway into saying series. But yeah, you have modern seasons that will do 6 episodes at a time. So just do that and focus on the quality. And also, the thing with Jurassic is they can learn from the past. So you look at the T-Rex breakout sequence, they deliberately did that at night, so the CGI was better. So they used visual trickery to enhance their visuals, which Jurassic could do if they really wanted to, if they were that worried about budget. But also, Jurassic is well known for building tension without having CGI as well. So you can do that, whether it's your like pteranodon poop in an aviary and suddenly realizing that there's something else in there, or whether you do your impact tremors in the water to create
Just
the
see a
sense
guy
of
like
something approaching.
there's just a guard holding his weapon and just he looks at his shoulder and it's just like and you're like
Yeah.
gross and so you know there's something up there.
Exactly. There's like ways that you can do it that are going to build it out. So
Yeah.
I kind of think like even if it was going to be astronomically expensive, get creative with it. Use camera trickery, use other effects,
Yeah.
and also
And that
balance it with puppetry because that's where Jurassic works best.
yeah, but that I guess, is extra expensive as well, so that would be interesting. I don't know, like I'm trying to think of scenes in any of these shows that actually used like a
Mandalorians had
real
some puppets in it.
yeah, there was definitely some in there. Ahsoka had
Yeah.
the Loth Cat and things like that.
Yeah.
So there are, smaller things that we could definitely do. I think that's probably where they would excel is they gotta
A pack
have
of compies.
yeah, a bunch of compies or like a baby raptor or something like
Yeah.
that'd be cool. I think hey, they could do a show like that where it's just like about a baby raptor or something and following it around. Um
Yeah. Tango's
but
Tales and do it based off of the creature from the parks.
yeah. But I think like these if you look at these other shows, Star Wars and Marvel have both had varying success when it comes to the CG though. Yes, these monsters look amazing and incredible, and I think Mandalorian overall looks pretty stellar. Ahsoka
Yeah.
looked pretty amazing. But you do have like Obi-Wan kind of was like it kind of didn't always look like it was super high quality at times. But then you
Yeah.
have Andor and Andor's like, no, we're gonna film in real places and do real things. And
Dude,
I think
it
it
blows my
shows.
mind what they did with the Barbican Centre in London. Like they used that for Imperial Command and put
Mhm.
like a bunch of blue screen up around the set. So like the walkways are real, but the rest of it is just edited in and that's
Yeah.
crazy.
But even those mountainscapes and things like they did go to real places to film like these scenes and it shows. At the same time though, Mandalorian doesn't go to any of those places. It has some backlot stuff going on, but like that also looks pretty great too. So I think
Yeah.
they need to find a balance where it's like it doesn't look like Thor Love and Thunder where it was just completely filmed on like soundstage and on the volume and stuff like that. It doesn't look like Ant-Man and the Wasp or anything. Like so you can't look like it's all just in a circular room
Yeah.
filled on a volume or something like that. So and
That
I'm
I
sure
think, and
that's
I think they've got a good model for it with Battle at Big Rock, right? Because that was a mixture of puppets and CGI, and we know that that was incredibly practical filmmaking because they went out into the woods in Ireland to film that.
Mhm.
And you look at the result you get from that, and the kind of sort of what's the word I want? The like physical feeling of that short is so Jurassic in terms of how it's achieved. Like it just feels like you're there. It feels very visceral is the word I'm looking for.
Mhm.
And I just think take that approach, find a way to make that approach work for television, and you're going to be onto something.
Well, that show is or that short was so interesting because when it starts, it feels like an episode of television to me.
Yeah,
As soon as it turns on and I think like I have the campfire and maybe the guitar and the conversations, it feels like a television series, it was like the pilot episode or something like that.
yeah,
it really feels like a pitch to me of like, hey, we could do something like this. I have no idea what the budget was on that thing. I don't remember if I've heard it or not, but
I
like,
feel like it was 6 to 8 million. Let me
yeah, I don't
hold up.
know.
I'm
For
gonna
an
go
eight
very
minute,
white for a minute.
yeah, man, dude, you look like a ghost right now, man. But I don't know. Like that
Um,
was 8 minutes short, right? But we're talking. We need to have like a at least 30 to an hour long show. So
yeah.
and a lot of shows are like 10 million an episode now or something like that. So is
Oh,
Universal willing to give that balance there
it looks
for a
like they
project?
never published the information on the budget. I'm sure I'd seen like
I
it.
feel
It
like
was
I've
several
seen it,
million. I
but
feel. Yeah.
yeah, but I don't remember what it was. But I just want them to at least not hamstring themselves into a setting that just feels weird and wrong. Like the Book of Boba Fett
Yeah.
had some really great stuff going on in there, but it also at the same time, a lot of it felt like a set. It didn't really have the speed and just the feel that you're kind of looking for. And I think we have to avoid mistakes like that with Jurassic. And
Yeah.
Jurassic, can be very fast paced and exciting and I think they have to find a way to do that while mixing the volume and real life sets and not fall into the same traps that some of these other streaming shows have.
100%. It needs to be a balance. And it's like I say, quality over quantity at the end of the day.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit more about kind of like where they could go,
Okay.
and without like going too deep, I guess. But there's several ideas on the table, right? We've got one of the most major ones is centered around obviously the Jurassic Park era and getting prequels
Mm,
and stuff like that. I feel like that is like one of the probably if you were to put a vote out there, which one do you want, prequel, this or that? Prequel would probably get the most votes. I feel like something that's centered around the Jurassic Park era.
yeah, it would, but I don't think it's going to be that compelling because I think,
Yeah,
like, going back to our discussion about lore, right? Actually, the early days of Jurassic Park are some of the few things where you do have quite a bit of lore established, and it's kind of established that the first injuries that occur are on Jurassic Park, where you have obviously Joffrey get injured in the raptor sequence. So I kind of feel like you can't that sort of shoehorns what you can do, doesn't it? Because you know instantly, okay, I can't really have dinosaurs injure anyone. I can't really have any massive set pieces unless you're going to say that it was all covered up afterwards. But
yeah, yeah,
it kind of feels like you can't do that. So then it becomes okay. What is this story? Maybe this is just about Jurassic Park's inception without any of the creatures. And then I think that that's going to lose the core fundamentals of what people enjoy. However, Brad, I
Ooh,
did have an idea before we came onto this show, and I'm going to put it out into the world. And apparently, Universal's record is if an idea is made public, they will not make the idea. So I'm sorry that this is now not going to happen. But how cool would it be if you had a series called Hammond's Dream and it follows Simon Masrani setting up Jurassic World? So you get all of the animals being moved from Sauna to Nublar. You get the early incidents with the ACU dealing with the animals. Maybe in one episode you get a live action depiction of the raptor incident from Evolution of Claire, and it's interwoven with flashbacks to John Hammond setting up Jurassic Park. So you have John Hammond setting up Jurassic Park in his failed dream, and in the current timeline, you have Simon Masrani realizing his dream
yeah.
with Jurassic World.
You've given them way too much to work with already. You got to stop. So I learned this a little while back. I stopped giving out ideas, man. I stopped because like they're not using them. They're not calling me up. You got to not give them the ideas. All right. That's a great idea though. And that's I feel like such a perfect way to do it. It's more so the logistics, right? Like
Yeah.
any kind of prequel story. And I think that was, tangent. I think that's what really excelled with Monarch was the fact that you had a story set in the current or kind of current timeline, and then you could go back in time to different periods of
Yeah.
time to tell different stories, and it was such a brilliant way to do that. But like I said, they filled in that lore with like a divergent path that was like, oh, you didn't know about this path that like had this lore, and they did it in such a way that they didn't need to, get some old actor that's dead and like
Yeah.
it's they didn't need to go full Tarkin or anything like that
Yeah.
so a lot of the Jurassic stories would be so difficult to do. I think we all talk about Hammond and getting a Hammond prequel. I don't know how many times I've heard Hammond prequel talked about, but like again, you brought it up just a minute ago. It's like, how interesting is that story, or how much you're gonna really get out of that? It would be great to see those moments, but I think the best way is the way that you just said, is like kind of flashing back to periods of time and not necessarily, a full show devoted to the one guy who maybe did or didn't have his hands into the mix there. But again, you're talking about like, well, you gotta.
Oh, dude. You have flashbacks to like him, you have bits of Henry Wu in there, you have Masrani, you have some of Charlotte Lockwood, and you just call it creation is an act of sheer will.
But it's so difficult because like John Hammond would just be the John Hammond that we saw in the movies.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not going to be any young guy or anything like that. So it's like maybe a little bit younger.
Look, if I want Anders Holm to play my young John Hammond, it's going to happen, okay?
I don't know who that is.
That's Bill Randa from Monarch, Brad.
Okay. See, don't you remember? I don't remember anybody's name from that show, whether it's character or real life. I have no idea. But that is possible. If you were to get, a Scottish kind of actor or whatever to be a young man, John Hammond, and see his, his sure, yeah, and to see his flea circus. Again, the idea of seeing the flea circus and the baby elephant and things, it sounds interesting, but it's not a full show. It's not something that I would sit there or I would barely sit there, let alone, somebody who just got Peacock or Netflix or whatever it's going to be on, So and if it's a Comcast show, you're not even going to be able to see it, man. It's not going to go to the UK. Why are we even talking about this? I'm sorry.
It's almost as if you're referencing The Ones Who Live as well.
It is almost like I'm referencing that. How many episodes is that? 6 or so? And
AMC, you suck.
It's tough that they don't distribute their shows. It's almost like AMC, Universal, Comcast, and all of their toys and everything have a hard time distributing like things around the world. Like it's almost like it's kind of a common theme between these two.
So this has
these
been a really
organizations.
fun show, Brad. I've really enjoyed talking about television, but it's actually my bedtime now. So goodbye.
Well, it's true. That is very true. We're almost wrapped up here. So, but I think that would just be such a difficult task, though, right? Like just to get any kind of John Hammond he's such an iconic character that it's so difficult to get a version of that. We just got the debut of the Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, a video game.
Oh, dude, I'm so hyped.
If they were to do a video game with John Hammond and some dude that sounded like John Hammond, fine, I guess. Well, I don't know what's the difference between
what would that video game be? Like John Hammond's journey from Scotland to London.
It would be called
gameplay as you travel between train carriage to train carriage and walk
sit there
down
and
the
watch
streets in London, finding your hotel.
Yeah, you sit in a vacant alley while you watch 0 fleas jump around your circus. No, it would be called John Hammond Survival. That was But no, the possibility would be there. I just don't know what is the difference between, bringing somebody to life in a film where, it's always talked about whether it's ethically correct or not. But then, like the Indiana Jones game, Denholm Elliott was just brought back to life in a video game. And he played, Marcus Brody in the Indiana Jones franchise. So, like, and somebody did the exact spot on voice. It was flawless.
Just wait until you find out that's an AI voice.
I know, dude. I thought about it. But Troy Baker does Indiana Jones, and it sounds like the best Indiana Jones voice I've ever heard. Like, and I pay attention, and I follow all those projects.
Ford's voice.
It's so wild. There were times where I was like, wait, did they get Harrison? And I was like, nah, that sounds a little different, but like so good. Harrison's like a very tough voice to get right. So they nailed it. But like,
I was like, did they do Harrison? There's no chance he would do a video game. We've seen his reaction to Star Wars.
He's I feel like he's like kind of an open book right now. He's doing all kinds of fun stuff. But getting Sir Richard Attenborough back would be very interesting. I don't know how they would ethically get around it or anything like that. And even Simon Masrani.
His brother, David.
Yeah, but he's also 90-something years old, dude. And he could do the voice.
We need to make this film happen next year.
Now! It has to happen now. John Hammond is... not John Hammond. John Williams is getting up there. We got to do something quick. Because he's got to do the score. But I think... Yeah, and then Simon Masrani as well. Like, I would love a story centered around that character, but the logistics of, like... We would just essentially just recast at that point because he is an impactful role. But
Mr. Mill can play him.
Yes, yeah, there we go. He's already doing it on his own.
Yeah,
so, but that character is very impactful for the Jurassic World story. But he's not as much as like John Hammond is, a part of this franchise. So I feel like you could more so replace him, and it would be more okay than John Hammond and. It would just be difficult nonetheless for either actor.
But I tell you what, Brad, why are we talking about replacing characters when there are plenty of interesting characters that Jurassic could still use? So if you take a look at the novels as an example, there is a rich tapestry of characters that they haven't used yet. So
hey man, don't spoil all the good ideas.
Marty Gutierrez. He could be an interesting character to use.
Yes.
You also have Ed Regis, who doesn't even appear in the original Jurassic Park film, but is a character in the novel. You have Howard King, who works with Dodgson and could be a character for his own story related to Biosyn. Or you could use George Basilton and have him reacting to the prevalence of dinosaurs on the mainland. Maybe even do a series with the paleontologist George Basilton, giving you dinosaur facts about the dinosaurs that are now on the mainland. There's a lot of characters that appear in the novels that have never been touched.
The show's just called Dino Facts with Basilton. That sounds thrilling, man. So many people would tune in. And it would be down. Rated up there with Planet Earth too.
Yeah.
But it's still the logistics of, those characters, at least we don't have an identifiable presence for those people. But, a Jurassic World
World story... It's almost as if I picked them because of that.
Yes, that would be fantastic and flawless, and we could absolutely have a story around that period of time. The next common one is like a Jurassic World story, which, you kind of brought up a little bit, but like, again, Masrani, but like Owen and Claire, like, what do you do there? You're not getting Chris Pratt, and I'm pretty sure Bryce Dallas Howard is not going to do it. So like, how do you ice skate around these characters and just like kind of pivot around the story and make it believable? There's so much pivoting I feel like we need to do.
Lowry, we've said it before and I'll say it again. A Jurassic World mockumentary series would be incredible.
I did see. I was going through this Planet Earth and looking at all these things, and I was like, there is one on here that maybe we could tackle, and it was The Office at number 26. Yeah. I was like, okay, maybe we could get an Office style.
It's just 6 episodes of Lowry and Vivian's conversations.
That would be actually great as like little shorts, like 2-minute shorts on the YouTube channel. Like that would be fantastic.
Occasionally you get a cameo, like you have Hamada running in the room saying a raptor's got loose, and they're like, oh, but we're choosing the colour coffee that we're gonna have at lunchtime. I don't know why colour coffee is a thing, but that's where my brain went.
Coffee mugs. Yeah. So it's just the logistics, I think, of getting stories centered around people that we know without having to
Yeah,
recast or do something that you know people don't really want to see with bringing
but
characters back to life or whatever. But it's
this is
tough.
where I think Jurassic has to be bold, like you were saying, because I know I talk about this a lot because it's the era of time that Tales is set in, but I think there's so much potential with this idea that there's dinosaurs in the wild now. Like, there's so
Hmm.
many isolated stories you could tell. So something that's been playing on my mind a lot, and I might end up developing a standalone audio drama for this once Tales is finished, is like, imagine a story of a group of sheriff's deputies in an isolated town having to deal with missing persons reports, and then they find out
Yeah.
that they're not missing because of, say, a person, they're missing because a dinosaur is nesting nearby. Or you have, like, the
Hey,
Quetzalcoatlus that we
you're
see in
giving them so
Dominion
many
nesting in the
ideas.
city. Yeah.
So many ideas. You're giving them away for free. You could be selling these ideas.
I
I
could. I could.
the last one I want to wrap it up with is just I think a totally plausible idea too is and everybody's been begging for this as well, is just a TV show retelling Jurassic Park. That's
Yes.
that's probable too. I think a very probable one. Now we're getting
Yeah.
Harry Potter being retold. I guess it's still happening. I have no idea. I haven't heard
Oh,
anything about it. It seems like a bad idea to me, but like it's happening, and it could be good. I don't know. Who
mm,
knows? But I think a retelling on television and not a new movie or something. At least
yeah.
it could be good and faithful. As long as it's faithful, that's really all I think we could ask
I'm
for is
going to
a
say
faithful
something
retelling.
controversial.
Say it.
It would be good to get a retelling if it wasn't Universal who did it. I think
Ooh,
if you're going to do a
controversial.
retelling, if you're going to do a retelling, it needs to feel massively tonally different to the film universe. Like, look at the way the Monsterverse has worked with, obviously, Godzilla -1 and the Monsterverse. I feel
Mhm.
like you need something that feels completely different to really do it
Yeah.
justice. And actually, I'd love something really gritty and R-rated,
Well, you know what?
which...
Go ahead. Go
Go
ahead.
on.
Finish your statement. So I was
I
gonna
was
say
going to say,
James Cameron.
James Cameron, yeah, he can
Yeah,
finally get his shot after
he got
missing
get his
out on the
shot.
rights.
He
Yeah.
wanted he wanted to make like an R kind of rated thing. So maybe that would be his chance. Let's do it. Step away from Avatar for a
I
few minutes.
think, I tell you what, Apple TV is the platform for this. You look at what
Yeah.
they've done with some more mature shows like For All Mankind or Slow Horses, and I really think that there's a scope there to actually take Jurassic and make it a bit darker, a bit grittier, and sort of closer to the horror-esque style that is present throughout quite a bit of the novel.
Yeah. I hope so. I mean that could be my potential number one idea, I think, is like just doing
Mm.
that. If we're I don't know. I have so many ideas in the back of my head that I think would be a lot of fun, and some of the ones that you
Yeah.
mentioned. But like a
Oh, my
retelling could
my
be
my
really
number one
interesting.
pitch for a TV show is you get a guy traveling around in a van, visiting the different dinosaur locations, and then communicating them on a podcast, a bit like the character in Godzilla versus Kong. But
Mm.
this character is called Brad, and the idea is he's
He's just a
traveling
robot.
around the world doing the Jurassic World podcast. Because he's shining a light on the Jurassic World, and
Yeah.
every now and then he'll stop to places and get people who have had encounters, like somebody who called themselves J Jurassic after they had an encounter with a Jurassic
Ooh.
animal, or
Yeah.
some weird British kid who thought he saw a dinosaur in Britain even though they didn't go across the
Yeah.
pond, so they
How?
couldn't be there.
I
All
don't
of
know.
that kind of stuff. And
Who's writing it?
Brad in
You
this
writing it?
universe would obviously be played by Brad Pitt.
Ah, okay. I thought that you were gonna play it.
No. Brad in this universe is played by Tim at Collect Jurassic.
Ooh, okay. I'm down with that. It's a good looking dude. Let's do it. Is this yeah, this is, you said, a podcast, but it's live action. Let's go. I'm
Yeah.
down. I could use a bigger beard. That's fine. Uh but I think there's plenty of ideas. I just hope that it's something good. And we don't even know if anything's ever going to happen. If they ever do, make one, just listen to this episode if you didn't already.
Yeah.
And we got some
Hit
ideas
me up.
for you.
Hopefully, if this is like 30 years down the line, I might be an established author. So if I am, hit me up, slide into my DMs, and I probably
Established
won't reply.
author Tom. I need help with the Jurassic story. Could you help me? Yeah, and I'll be just still podcasting, I guess. Probably I can't get away from it. But yeah, Tom,
Brad,
thank you for sitting here.
I have one thing to say.
Go
You'll
ahead.
be rolling into the podcast studio with the Zimmer frame.
I'm gonna be like, what did you call the show? I don't know what you said. Shining a light. I'm here shining a light on Jurassic World, everybody. I hope you like it. Hope you love it. It's gonna be great. Welcome, everybody.
I'm actually taking notes for Tails right now that you do quite a good impression of an old man.
I gotta send in my a dinosaur. Like I gotta send that into you so I could be cast. Was that good? Is that my tape? Can you just use that?
That was spot on. Your cast, main character.
Awesome. Whoa! Ah! I'm just like a Wilhelm scream at this point.
I actually so you're playing the cameo of Owen Grady.
Oh, cool. It's basically just my Mr. DNA voice, but like a little more laid back. Well, this is done. We finished. That's the end. It's over. All right, man. I'm done.